What's up, guys? This is another episode of Off the Post Off Season. We're chilling in the off season, doing stuff or finding stuff to do. So we're trying to make the most of it. As you can see, we have our lovely panel down here. Let's see, we have a great time today. See what Courtney, what have you been up to?
I haven't been on this show in so long. I'm like, man, I hope I remember how to like talk and soccer. Things are good. Just finishing up the end of the semester, trying to get ready for Christmas. I'm still buying Christmas presents and have wrapped nothing, so that's good, I guess. Not really. So I'll be doing that when we're done. But other than that, just dealing with college students.
Which is always fun, if I remember right.
That's really special here.
Jen, how have you been doing?
A little annoyed. Some really annoying drama stuff going on, but I won't bore everybody with the details of that. So, other than that, really minor annoyance, I'm doing okay.
That's the nicest thing you've said all year, Jen. Glad to hear you're back. And let's go to Karen and see what she's doing. Karen, how's everything good?
Well, it's the holiday season, and I work retail, so you know who that is. But other than that, it's good. Moving right along.
Sounds good. We moving right along. We did that perfectly, that transition. As you know, if you want to say something to us, use the hashtag WoSoTalk or off-season talk, whatever you prefer. Our first topic,
pick one. I'm gonna check the tag. So pick one. Whatever we pick. Don't do off-season top. Do whatever the one we usually do is. Yeah, I'm checking the tags on. I'm checking the tags on Twitter. Don't give them options.
Okay. you have one choice.
5 hashtags.
No options. Right? You're only using this one today, people. But anyway, let me tell you. Okay, so our first topic is talking really more about international players. Going in various leagues and taking spots from domestic players. Who could probably use these spots to develop. Talk about our thoughts on it, our opinions on it, and we'll take it from there. We'll see how the discussion goes. So I'm going to start with you first, Jen. Your thoughts on this issue?
Okay, well, I was actually the one who kind of brought this idea up because I've been seeing it discussed in a lot of different places. Some people thinking, oh, it's such a great idea to bring in all of these top caliber international players because it'll help improve our profile, raise the level of our league. I mean, we see that with the NWSL. We get all excited when there's the possibility of international players coming to our leagues, like Kim Little, Jess Fishlock, Sam Kerr. Amandine Henry is probably the most high-profile one, and she brought up a lot of attention. So, there's that side, but then there's the other side. It's like, well, wait a minute. We could be using that spot to bring up a young player fresh out of college and maybe develop them into a potential national team player. And if you have these internationals coming in, there's less room for them. So, and then you lose the domestic player base. You lose the players that could potentially become national team stars because you got a top quality international taking their spot. So there's a downside and an upside to it. And, I can see both sides. I personally fall on the opinion of maybe one, maybe two, but not to the degree that we see with a team like Portland, where all they're doing is loading up on national team players and international stars. So, I mean, I get both sides. I get, why some coaches don't like it, like Rory Dames in Chicago. He doesn't do the international thing. He's like, internationals don't need them. I'll just develop these young players. And we have seen a lot of young players develop under his under him. Julie Johnston, Vanessa DiBernardo, Daniel Colaprico, Huerta. I could go on and on and on, but It's the point. He's the side of, I don't want the internationals. I just want American players that are probably going to be around. And then on the other side, you see a team like Portland, where there's like, oh, I'll just take every national team allocation player I can. I'll sign a bunch of internationals and let the young players run on the bench. Same, I think, to agree with Laura Harvey. I'm sorry, Kraken, but it's kind of true. She really does like her international players and her veterans, and doesn't exactly have the best track record of developing. So you have both sides. I can kind of see both sides. I kind of fall more towards the wanting to develop younger players because it brought the Flash a lot of success. I mean, the biggest parts of their championship team were those 4 first rounders and the 3rd rounder D'Angelo that they grabbed. I mean, she is an international, but it was the young players that they took last year and this year that were the nucleus of that championship winning team. So those are kind of my thoughts.
Well, I heard the brought up in this conversation, so I'm going to let Karen speak.
Cool. I am kind of on the fence about it because of the same reasons that Jen said. I think that it's very important to pull the young players, the young American players from our colleges into the NWSL. I think that's super important for growing the U.S. national team. I mean, we are obviously having some problems at the youth level with our national teams on both the men's and women's side. So that is very important. Getting them experience playing at that level, at that speed, with that level of difficulty against world-class players is going to be a huge, I don't know, improvement on what we've been seeing from the youth teams with the women's side and the men's side. I don't know what just happened there.
Words are hard.
I don't know where the word time came from. Anyways, but it's fine. It's a long day. But I also think that international players are incredibly important to pull into a league. I mean, international players bring people to the stands and they bring money to the teams. That's for damn sure. I mean, obviously, Portland didn't have any trouble bringing people to watch their team before they got Henri and Brenier's daughter and all of those players. But you look at a team like Chicago, and yeah, he's like super stoked about all of his, you know, domestic players. But just think about a huge name signing from some other country. People would want to come and watch Chicago play. I think you would see their attendance go. So, I mean, you got to look at both sides. As for like teams like the Reign that has a pretty good balance of international and domestic, I think that Laura Harvey had some, I guess she had it a lot easier than probably Portland because her internationals, their teams didn't make it into the World Cup. So, I mean, it doesn't really count really when they're going to be there because they're not going to be playing in the World Cup. But I do think the internationals are extremely important, not just for attendance, but because of that world-class flair that you would get. I mean, playing against Henri versus playing against somebody that came up from college, it's going to be totally different. I mean, Henri has that international level of play that is incredibly, I don't know, you would learn a whole lot playing against a player like Brenier's daughter, Henri, Little, Fishlock, versus playing against somebody that grew at the domestic level, just because you're learning from people that are coming from different types of soccer, different places where they focus on different things. So I think it's important for a league to have that variety of playing style. It's just like any other league at any other level of the sport, men's, women's. I mean, you always have players from Brazil, players from Spain, players from England, players from Africa, players from Eastern Europe. So I do think that's really important, but I also think that you can't lose that youth, American youth that like are coming up, like Sullivan and Ashley Sanchez whenever she gets to college, and like people like that. You're going to want to see those people in the NWSL too. So I think you need to strike a balance and not go too far either way, honestly. Yeah, they take spots from the domestic players, but it also makes everything a lot more challenging. And I think challenging is probably a good thing.
But it's funny, Karen, actually, you said the words that's what I was thinking more so. The reason why I like them, just I guess more so as a fan, just because that world-class flair, the variety of like, you know, where they were at, how they were trained, a different style, and then you put that against a player that is like, you know, maybe a homegrown talent that kind of made it into the league. It's, you know, I mean, that's something you can't replace, you know, be taught that, you know, because most domestic players may learn the same type of, this is just someone from a totally different country that was trained a certain different way, you know, it helps so much. So I guess that's my biggest point of why Courtney, some of your thoughts.
Yeah, I understand what people are saying, and I do get about taking spots, but if you granted they're spread around the different teams now, they're not but the league only allocates certain number of international spots. They're not necessarily per team because teams can trade them and things like that. So I think the league is trying to look out for that by limiting how many international players that are allowed in the league. You know, no matter how they're distributed on the team. I think that helps with that, I guess, in the sense that it helps from having a fully loaded team of international players. I also think when you look at kind of the situation with some of the players, I think having international players in addition to what you all said, look at kind of the unofficial, hopefully soon to be official partnership with the Australian League in the sense that. And I know some players have even gone to Japan in the off season because their seasons don't necessarily combine as much, or they're able to come and go more freely, either in the Japan League or in the Australia League. By not only having international players from those countries here in the NWSL, it does all those things that you guys have mentioned, helps competitiveness, helps different styles of play, helps with people in the seats, but it also kind of allows. Our NWSL season is so short, it allows for players not only this, and that's the thing, not only the stars, you necessarily see a lot of the stars going over to play abroad in the off season. You see a lot of, the kids that are kids. I hate calling them kids. Sorry, the people that are fresh out of college or have, minimal professional experience, the rookies, people who maybe have even been around a while but haven't maybe had that experience. You see a lot of people who could use the development, a lot of players who you maybe would want to see getting a shot in the national team and things like that. Those are the players who go in the off season. Those are the players who go to the people who go abroad to play, in various international leagues. So I think that it's important to have them in the league because it does not only help the league here in our season, but also it provides a place for players to go, a lot of the young players to go elsewhere. I understand we're talking about trying to develop players to be on the national team, but and as much as Jill Ellis has kind of tried and improved on trying to pull players from the NWSL, there's so many people on the teams for NWSL that are sad, and I'm not trying to diss anyone, but are never gonna get that shot. I guess there's so many spots on the national team, even for developmentally speaking. True. So yeah, there's only so many people. We can develop them all we want, but not everyone is gonna get a shot being on the national team. That's just the reality of the situation with that. So. I don't really know. I understand the points that were made about the concerns about it, but I like having them here, and I think that it's beneficial for the players not only during the NWSL season here, but it helps them have something to do and play somewhat competitively in the off season as well. It doesn't necessarily, like I said, depending on the fact there's not so many space on the national team. I don't really think it affects it that much.
Yep, good thoughts. Good thoughts. Yeah, it's one of those topics that I think everyone has. What's that?
I was going to say it's interesting that you brought up the Australian League, Courtney, because this discussion between bringing in internationals and using the spots for domestic players has been going on a lot longer in Australia because their age range is a lot lower than ours. Mm-hmm. for us, it's like 21, 22 of these players are just coming out of college when they're rookies. In the W League, they have 15 and 16-year-olds, which is 15 is the youngest you can, is the absolute youngest you can be to play in the W League. So historically, they have brought up a lot of their current Matildas who were playing in the league at 15, 16 years old. You know, Sam Kerr was only a couple months after her 15th birthday when she scored her first goal. And we just saw a couple of weeks ago the stacked Melbourne City. They lost their first ever game on a goal by a 15-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, they're contributing at that age, and the concern from some people there is like, because if you see the American players that are going over there, they are such a step up above most of those Australian players that they are going to get a lot of the playing time, which means these young players that would normally get that time and possibly develop into Matildas are now sitting on the bench in favor of, you know, the U.S. players who might be bench players here but are stars there, you know, the established Matildas, internationals from other countries. So that is a discussion that's been going on a lot longer there, and I don't think they've still managed to find a balance between playing the young players and bringing in Matildas and internationals. So that was a little bit of the inspiration for this discussion.
But I think the counterpoint to that, though, is that, like, yes, maybe they're not getting as many spots, but if you're 15, 16 years old and you're playing with, maybe your first season professionally, you're playing with players like Christine Nairn, and I know, like, Jess Fishlock's been and Kim Little have been, and, you know, I'm not so great with, like, who's there now, but there's, like, a lot of great players that are there now, and yes, maybe those, like, international players to Australia are taking potential spots, and they need to, you know, I agree they do need to come up with a better balance for that, but even if they're not playing games, you're getting to train with people who you said, like, are a step up above, like, their talent and things like that, and they're getting to learn from those players who, you know, they are coming in the Matildas. They're going to be playing against some of those players, you know, potentially, or, you know, caliber players like that when they play the U.S. They won't be playing, a lot of U.S. internationals, you know, don't go abroad, but, you know, players who kind of play that style and have that experience. So I understand what you're saying, but I think also it can be turned around into kind of a positive too, where even if they're not maybe getting game time, which they should probably figure out how to, like, rotate that more, like, they're still getting the experience of playing with and training with, you know, players that are step up or have more professional experience than they have being so young. So that's another way to look at it too.
Okay.
All right, sounds good. I like that topic. That's one that it seems like even in the men's game they talk about sometimes. So it's one that I know there's really just no one has really answered the question, so to speak. Like, I don't know. It's interesting, but I enjoy international, so that's the type of thing. It's more as a fan, I like to see them, so that's where
Everybody
But
does.
yeah, I think that's why. So let's go into the player of the year stuff. Tobin Heath. We're going to start with you, Courtney. What do you have?
Yeah, I think that's when you look at, it's kind of hard this year. Like, the U.S. has had, like, not the worst, but not, like, the total greatest year, I guess. They've had a lot of different, like, issues and players coming in and out and things like that. I think Tobin Heath has probably been the most consistent. I think, you know, throughout, when you can say, like, oh, so-and-so had a really good game, and now, oh, so-and-so's having a really crappy game, you know, in a year where players have not necessarily been the most consistent, I guess. Not saying that they've been bad, but I guess consistency-wise, I think Tobin Heath is someone who most games, you know, I'll watch and say, okay, like, even if she didn't do the best or score a goal or anything like that, she at least played somewhat consistently. And so I think that it's been a really good year for her. And so I think it's a great choice. I don't have any problems with it. I think out of, I guess, like, the players on the team as a whole, like, I guess that she's the one who's probably been more consistent and has really had pretty solid year, both, like, for club and country. And I think that that's something that we've seen a lot more leadership from her too on the national team this year than we've seen in the past. So I think it's a good choice. I mean, good for her. Like, she's had a pretty good year, and it kind of just caps off, like, I think it's one of the better years she's had in a while. So it's a good choice, and I'm happy for her.
No, Courtney, yeah, I agree with you. I think it was more so consistency with me with her, because it was just one of those things where it was like, yeah, it was a pretty solid year when for the most part she didn't have any like her bad games. I can't remember too, you know, it wasn't like a lot of bad games stood out, which some players you can pick out a lot of bad games. For her, for the most part, she was consistent. And then for club, she was really, you know, in the game she did play, she seemed like a big leader for Portland, standing out amongst stars. So it's a player I could deal with winning that award as well. Let's go to you, Karen.
Yeah, Tobin Heath deserved it 100%. When the list came out of nominees, I was just like, Tobin. It wasn't even a difficult situation. It's just, and not just what she did on the national team, because she was extremely impressive with the national team. She might have had a few off games maybe here and there, but for the most part, she was the player that was the most fun to watch. She was the player that was having the most fun, and she was the one that was connecting with pretty much everybody. But for me was what she did for Portland, because a lot of those games, she literally just like took the Thorns and like put them on her back and just like carried them the rest of the game so that they like either tied or won the game in like the last couple of minutes. And it was Tobin. When all of the other players seemed like they were like, nah, it was Tobin that was on the field and just like kicking her own ass trying to get her team in there. And I'm not one of those people that's like, the U.S. Nationals don't care about their club teams. Like, not at all. I think that's bogus. But Tobin was one of those players where you could just tell she was just like, she just wanted her team to win so bad. And I mean, and she carried them to that win, like most of their games that they won. So I think her work with the Thorns was the most impressive, but then she just had an amazing record with the U.S. soccer team as well. Was it like 8 and 7 with goals and assists, something like that?
6 goals, 8 assists.
I was close.
Yeah, 6 goals, 8 assists, 22 games. Yeah.
So yeah, and that's a really good record for a midfielder. And I mean, she's probably had even more assists to the assists and things like that. She was like instrumental in assisting goals, whether she got the assist or not. So she earned it. I mean, there's been years in the past when she's had amazing games and she's had like god awful games where you're just like, Tobin, no, go. But this year she just like consistently had amazing games all in a row. So she deserved it 100%, way more than any other player.
Sounds good. And now, Jen, your thoughts?
Yeah, I can't really add much to what both Courtney and Karen said. I mean, if you compare her year to the other 4 nominees, I mean, Crystal Dunn was probably the biggest challenger, and it showed because the margin of victory wasn't very wide. It was about 6 points. So I think there was a bit of a divide this year because of how overall lackluster it was between Tobin and Crystal. But I think those two probably were the best overall players, both for their clubs and for the country. I mean, you look at Crystal, even though she wasn't scoring goals like she did last year, she was still helping the Sphere in other ways. And I mean, she had an amazing finals. Let's not forget that final game that she had. I still honestly think she should have been the MVP of that game instead of D'Angelo, but that's another can of worms. So yeah, I mean, I can't argue against Tobin. I think I probably might have maybe preferred Crystal a little bit, but I don't have one single thing to point to and say this is why Tobin should not have won it. So those are my thoughts. And we do have a question. It's from our old friend RJ. Should club play matter for a national team player of the year award?
Oh man, that's a good one, actually. My thoughts, I always kind of consider it in the back of my mind anyway, even though I shouldn't. I just feel like you shouldn't, but in the back of my mind, I always think of like, well, what did they do at their club as well? But If it's a national
mean-
team award, then no. You know, so
I mean,
Courtney?
it was the U.S. Technically, this is going to be splitting hairs, and people are going to get mad at me about this. But technically, it was like like the U.S. soccer like female of the year. I think if U.S. soccer is like honestly like if they're paying them to play in the league, which they are, I don't think it's a huge. Like I agree, it should mostly be on national team performance. However,
Right.
I think in this different situation where like the federation's paying them, I think if they want to account their club play into it, since they all on the national team do play on a club, I think if that wasn't the case, that would be maybe a little bit unfair, but they all do play in the league. So I don't know. I don't have a problem with it. I don't necessarily know that that's how it should be. And I think that like if U.S. Soccer wasn't involved in like paying them for the NWSL and like not everyone played in the NWSL that's on the national team, I think I would have more of an issue with it. But like technically, if you're going to call it U.S., not like it wasn't U.S. Women's National Team that's technically Player of the Year. It was like U.S. Soccer Player of the Year. So like I have less of an issue with it, giving the situation like of how things are set up, I guess. But I do think it should be mostly national team performance. But again, if U.S. Soccer is paying them in the league and it's called the U.S. Soccer Award, I have less of an issue with it than maybe some other people do.
Okay, yeah, I can see what you're saying though. I should run with that excuse because I agree with that, Karen.
I agree with Courtney.
All right, Courtney's is good. Like that's perfect.
I know people are gonna not agree, and that's totally fine. But that's just like I have very strong opinions about a lot of things, and I have less of an issue with that than I have with other things. So
I have other things to worry about.
Yeah, right.
And Gia.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that club play was a big factor in determining the U.S. Or, I mean, you look at 2014, Lauren Holiday really didn't do a tremendous amount for the national team, but, you know, she had a really good, strong season for Kansas City, and they won the title, so I think that's ultimately what may have pushed her to getting the Player of the Year award over someone like Carly Lloyd, who had a great season for both club and country, but didn't have the best, wasn't playing on a team that had a good record overall. So I think in that case, it was probably the club play that pushed her over the edge. So yeah, I'm kind of a, you know, I think it should primarily be based on the international play, although the club play shouldn't be completely ignored. You know, just put more weight on what they do for the national team, but maybe keep a little bit in the back of the mind saying they did this for their club. So I don't actually have a problem with it. I can see why people would, but for me personally, I don't.
Very good, very good. That was actually a good little.
Oh my God, did we all agree on something? Wow, the world.
That's what I was
We
saying.
have to mark this day down because that will probably not happen for another year.
We all agreed
No,
on something.
What like December 18th, 7:28 p.m. Eastern Standard Time? Is it Eastern Time now because it's daylight? I don't know, but whatever on the East Coast time. We all agreed on something, and the world didn't explode. I'm shocked.
That's happening in 2 minutes.
I'm sitting right next to the window, and there is an asteroid coming. Sorry.
There it is, and we're off. Well, that was great. Follow-up question that made us all become friends again. I love it. Thank you for that one. Well, on that note, that's another episode of Off Season Off the Post, and I'm your host, DJ.
I just want to say before we
and we'll
leave,
pop back up. Well, you know,
sorry, go ahead.
what's that, Courtney?
No, I was gonna say.
I was just going to tell like we're, you know, with the.
Oh.
Courtney, go ahead.
Courtney.
I was just gonna say I'm gonna put it out there to the world. So now I have to make myself do it. We're talking beforehand. There was some lost off the post footage that just never made its way to the internet about an epic road trip that Giancarlo and I took this summer to Kansas City. I was just saying, we're gonna be back with some more videos, obviously in the off season, you know, during the draft, like after the draft, and probably one in between. But just going to say, keep an eye out on the YouTube and the social media. There may at some point this holiday season be a lost file off the post video that appears. So now it's out there to the world. So it's going to motivate me to like get my life together and try to make it happen. So keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye out for that. Like the missing episode of that Spirit Fan that never aired. We'll see. So keep an eye out. I'm going to motivate myself as long as everything works and the files actually download to my computer and stuff like that and work. We're going to make that happen over the winter break. So stay tuned for that Spirit Fan, the lost episode from 6 months ago.
Is it going to be like the Blair Witch Project?
I was just about to say that Courtney and Jen go.
Jen's really, really good with filming and not being nauseating and stuff. So I mean, we're not dead. We made it back.
Another axe murderer scene.
Like,
no people were harmed in the making of this video. So that may be relieving or disappointing for some of you out there. I don't really know. That's all. Sorry, DJ. Continue signing us off, please.
Okay, well, on that note, I can't wait for this video to see what happened. They got lost in the world. But all right, guys, we'll see you, like I said, pretty soon.
We didn't actually get lost.
No, okay, well, no losses. Well, that's always better then, because I hate the loss, because it tails off, and I was like, oh, okay, well. All right, guys. Yeah, like I said, we'll give you something in between the Christmas break, and then afterwards, you'll start seeing it, because we'll start getting closer to all the good, juicy stuff like the draft, unless something crazy happens, and we'll be back. So we'll talk to you guys soon. Let's all wave, and we'll call it a good Sunday. Booyakasha.